Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido and welcome to our Season A2 Champions game as it is the Cinnabar Blazes going up against the Petalburg Razors. And as these two sides have a look at their opening hand of Game 1, let's have a look at this tale of the tape. As for the Cinnabar Blazes, they went out of Season A1's victory road in straight series, but they have worked their way into the Champions game, whereas for the Petalburg Razors last season, they took the inaugural wooden crown, but here they find themselves with an opportunity at redemption. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the fire decks? Will it be the colorless decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And going first, it is going to be this fast days deck of the Petalburg Razors, moving their style into the active spot for the Cinnabar Blazes. They're using their Flint Lockwood deck, laying out their two Sizzlipedes in both the active and benched slots. But here we go in our Game 1 of our Champions game, and you need all three decks to win to claim that Champions flair this season, as it is the Professor's Research being played by the Petalburg Razors. They get the Staraptor and they get the Barry. They've already got the Staravia in hand, plus their second Barry was already there. The Cinnabar Blazers just pulled the Cyrus, playing their own Professor's Research, getting another two cards. They get the Heat Rotom and the Pokemon Center Lady. Now they've also got the Rocky Helmet and that Team Rocket Grunts. They lay out the Heat Rotom and they're going to get the Rocky Helmet onto the Sizzlipede here, and it only requires 1 energy to start going on the offensive. This Gnaw will only do 10 damage to the Starly though, who does have a total of 60 health, so it takes that early game 10 damage. But as we said, they've already got the full Staraptor line in hand to the Razors as they pull the Jigglypuff, already having both Wigglytuffs with those comforting songs. They get the Staravia online. Now they can't go on the offensive because Staravia does require 2 energy, but they could just be setting up for the Staraptor here nice and early. They send it back over to the Blazers, who do pull the Macargo. Now they don't have a Slugma out yet, so they are going to play the Team Rocket Grunt. They want to get the energies off the Staravia. They don't want to have to deal with a Brave Bird Staraptor, but they flip the tails immediately, so no energies do get removed from the Staravia as they continue with the Gnaw from the Sizzlipede, chipping away at the Staravia here. But that Wigglytuff looking to offset that shortly. The Razors do pull their own Rocky Helmet, immediately moving it onto the Staravia as well. And here it is, the Wigglytuff's online. It's got that comforting song. It restores 20 damage from the active Pokemon. So this gets the Staravia already back to full strength. They get a second energy onto the Staravia, and here it is, the Staraptor. Now it does have 3 energy attack cost, but the Barry brings that retreat cost down by 2, so they can then go straight on the offensive. And this Brave Bird does 130 damage, wiping this Sizzlipede off the board, and the Petalburg Razors taking our first point in our Season A2 Champions game of the PokeType League TCG. With this fast days deck, they want to try and get the early win. They've been running the gauntlet through Victory Road, and they look to complete it here today. As the Cinnabar Blazers moving their Heat Rotom into the active spot, they pull their second Heat Rotom. It does go on the bench, but their active Heat Rotom gets its second energy. With this Heat Breath, they flip the tail, so it does not do an additional 30 damage, only doing that base 30 damage to the Staraptor, and they needed to try and maximize that damage here because Staraptor can wipe all these Pokemon off the board quite easily. The Razors pulling their second Staravia here. They are thinking of getting a third energy onto the Staraptor, but knowing they've got that barrier in hand still, they go with the comforting song on this Wigglytuff that just received the energy. Does restore 20 health from the Staraptor. That Brave Bird does do 20 recoil damage here, but it is the Barry once again coming into play, reducing the attack cost of the Brave Bird, 130 damage, and the Razors are in full control with this fast days deck in Game 1. And this is not looking good for the Flint Lockwood deck of the Cinnabar Blazers. They're looking who they want to move into the active spot, opting to go with the Sizzlipede. It has 60 health. They pulled the Pokeball. This is not good. They are going to play this. They will get a basic Pokemon out of their deck, which is going to be the Slugma, but there is not much they can do. This is fantastic for the Petalburg Razors. They are looking to get that early game momentum, whereas the Cinnabar Blazers, they have not dropped a single game yet in Victory Road here, but it looks like that is exactly what is about to happen because the Petalburg Razors 1 more energy onto this Staraptor. They don't care about the comforting song right now. They've set up the Brave Bird for the 3rd straight turn, and another 130 damage wipes this Sizzlipede into the discard pile, and this fast days deck for the Petalburg Razors takes Game 1. And as we have our first table reset, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the action in our oncoming seasons of the PokeType League TCG, but it is the Petalburg Razors flipping heads. This time they're using their bombardment deck, moving the Snorlax into the active spot. They're going once again up against the Flint Lockwood deck of the Cinnabar Blazes, moving their Heat Rotom into the active spot. And again, the Razors pulling the Barry, who has the same effects on Snorlax as they do Staraptor, but Snorlax does require at least 2 energy plus the Barrier to start going for those collapse. They play the Professor's Research, they get an Apom, and they've got an Ambipom already in the hand. They send it over to the Blazers, who pull the Center Scorch, playing their own Professor's Research now, as they do generate the first energy of Game 2. They get the Pokemon Center Lady and the second Heat Rotom, and that Heat Rotom does go on the bench. They get their first energy onto the active Rotom here, sending it back over to the Razors, who can start generating energy of their own, and they pull their own Fan Rotom, playing their second Professor's Research. They're thinning this deck very quickly. They get a Beneria, and they get the Rocky Helmet. They put the Rocky Helmet onto the Snorlax. They want to make the Blazers reluctant to go on the offensive here in this game too. And the Ambipom is online, who only requires 1 energy. That is a bonus of this bombardment deck. They can capitalize on setting up the Snorlax, whilst the Lopunnies and the Ambipoms only require that single energy. It is the Slugma being pulled and moved immediately onto the bench as a second energy onto the Heat Rotom, and again they flip a tail, so it's only going to be 30 damage onto the Snorlax, but with that Rocky Helmet it's going to do 20 damage back to the Rotom. Now the Rotom is a very easy target for the Snorlax, so they're not really concerned with the Rocky Helmet. The Razors do pull their second Apom here, and they get their second energy onto the Snorlax, but with this Barry, with this Collapse, they are going to squish this Heat Rotom, and once again they're going to quickly take the first point in Game 2 as Heat Rotom is moved into the discard pile, but Snorlax has fallen asleep. The Razors need to flip their heads for it to wake up, but they will have ample opportunity before it has 4 energy on it. And the Blazers do opt to move their second Heat Rotom into the active spot. The Razors have flipped the tails. This is good for the Blazers because it is going to buy them a bit of time as they do pull their second Center Scorch. They've got the Makagos in hand. With this Searing Flame, it does require 2 energy, but it does leave the active Pokemon that is on the receiving end with the burn that does 20 damage in between turns as well. So they're starting to set up the Makago, who's also got 120 health. The Razors back with the coin flip. Once again, they flip their tails. This is great for the Blazers. The longer that Snorlax can stay asleep, this will buy them time to set up, especially if they can get a Center Scorch online, doing 130 damage with those Fire Blasts, but it is a third energy onto the Snorlax. They know they've got a bit of time, but again, the Razors and this bombardment deck have flipped their tails. Now the Blazers have pulled a Dawn. This can allow them to move an energy from the Makago to the Heat Rotom, and that is exactly what they're doing. So now Heat Rotom has got 2 energy on it. It can go for this Heat Breath. They need to try and get 60 damage here. But again, they are flipping tails. Both these sides having no luck with the coin flips here in Game 2. But there is that Rocky Helmet coming into play. But the Razors have another opportunity to wake Snorlax. And this time, when it counts, they flip the head. Snorlax has awoken as they get another Barry. They cannot use the Barry, but they're just going with the 4th energy onto the Snorlax. They are going to evolve the Beneria into the Lopunny and another Collapse. And it is going to be another Heat Rotom in the discard pile. The Razors only need 1 more point to take Game 2, and they will be 1 game away from becoming our Season A2 champions. And with Snorlax back asleep, the Razors flip the coin again, and it is a tail. So Snorlax remains asleep, which is great for the Blazers, who do pull their Saurus. They've only got the Makago in the active spot, but it's only got this 1 energy that's just been placed on it. So it comes back over to the Razors, and they've flipped their heads. This is not what this Flint Lockwood deck needs to see. The Giant Cape being pulled by the Razors. Now, you can only put 1 Pokemon tool on a Pokemon, and Snorlax already has the Rocky Helmet. They get an energy onto the Ambipom. They're going to play the Team Rocket Grunt. They want to get the energy off the Makago. And they get the heads straight away, so Makago loses its soul energy. This is great for the Razors because it buys them more time, because they go with the Collapse. Makago can outlast it. It has 20 health remaining. Snorlax is asleep here. A coin flip though, and it is a tail, so it does remain asleep. Again, it buys the Blazers a little bit of time, but this is not looking good for them here. They do have the Pokemon Center Lady, having just pulled the Rocky Helmet, restoring 30 health, but Makago still cannot outlast this from Snorlax. They play the potion, another 20 health restored. It's still in discard range. They get an energy back onto the Makago, plus the Rocky Helmet. They're trying to deter the Razors, but the Razors are a coin flip away from winning game 2. But they do flip the tails. This is exactly what the Blazers needed. It is the second low pony being pulled for the Razors, looking through their hand, and they are thinking of how they want to approach this. They're actually going to get a fan Rotom onto the bench, who we've seen absolutely nothing from this season. It does get its first of 2 required energy. There's not much else the Razors can do unless they want to lay down that giant cape they've got in hand. They are going to end their turn, and they flip their heads. The Snorlax is awake. This is not good for the Blazers. They need to pull off some kind of a miracle here. They pull the giant cape. That is of no use to them. The Rocky Helmet's already on Makago. It gets its second energy. They go for the Searing Flame. It does 30 damage. It'll get the burn as well, so another 20 damage onto the Snorlax. But this is fantastic for the Razors. Snorlax is wide awake even with this burn. They go for the coin flip. They flip their heads. Snorlax is awoken from the burn, has healed from the burn already. They pull the Pokeball, but that's not what they care about. They are going to take game 2 of the Bombardment deck and the Petalburg Razors. They have wiped this Makago into the discard pile, and the Petalburg Razors are 1 game away from becoming our Season A2 champions. The Cinnabar Blazes did not drop a single game coming into this Champions game throughout Victory Road, and they're going to have to win 3 in a row to bring this back. But the Razors once again flip heads their last remaining deck. It is their Hall of Origin deck. They've got the Bidoof and the Regigigas in hand. And it is the Regigigas in the active spot going up against the Paldean Taurus, because it's now the Flameathon deck being played by the Cinnabar Blazes. They can use any deck that they choose. None of them have won a game yet, so it will be that Paldean Taurus as the Porygon is pulled for the Razors. They've got the Porygon 2s, both of them in hand, so the Porygon is on the bench. They send it over to the Blazers, who pull the Ponyta, and we can see that Rising Lunge Rapidash here. And if you're wondering why Ponyta and Rapidash are in this deck, the Blazers were unable to fill all 3 evolutionary lines per deck. They need at least 9 evolutionary lines on their side using the Space-Time Smackdown, Trumpet Light, and Shining Revelry decks. So that's why we'll see the Rapidash and the Ninetales lines in this side. But it is the Pokeball being played by the Razors. They've got Arceus now in their hand. Now there's only 1 Arceus and 1 Regigigas in this Hall of Origin deck, as Regigigas does get its first energy. The Blazers, they do get the Rocky Helmet, and they are going to place this onto the Paldean Taurus, who does have 1 energy on it at the moment. They do get the second energy on it. It does still require 1 more, so it can go for this Blaze Tackle that does 80 damage. It can do more than half of the health of, take more than half of the health of Regigigas. As the Bibarel is pulled for the Petalburg Razors, Regigigas gets its second energy now. The Blazers, they pulled the Houndour. They've already got a Houndoom in hand, so that Houndour immediately goes onto the bench. But here it is, the Paldean Taurus, this Blaze Breed with that Blaze Tackle gets its third energy. It does 80 damage. It will get 10 recoil damage, but Regigigas is brought down to only 60 health, and you have to question, the Razors just put a second energy onto the Regigigas. It cannot outlast another hit from the Taurus. They may have just made a huge error here in game 3. They are very close to taking this Champions title here. They want that Flare on their decks for next season. They do get a first energy onto the Arceus, but without much else they can do, they do end their turn sending it over to the Blazers, who pull their genetic Apex Rapidash so they can evolve their Ponyta, but they go with the Rising Lunge Rapidash. They get the Houndoom onto the bench as well. Now Rising Lunge does require 2 energy, and there it is, another 80 damage from that Blaze Tackle onto the Regigigas. The Rocky Helmet coming into play from the Regigigas, so Paldean Taurus takes an additional 20 damage, but they've taken the first point here in game 3. They needed this desperately. It is the Porygon 2 now online, as another Porygon does get pulled for the Petalburg Razors immediately onto the bench. The Bidoof also being moved onto the bench, but they're continuing to set up the Arceus instead of the Porygon 2, who cannot outlast a hit here from this Paldean Taurus. The Cinnabar Blazers starting to build a little bit of momentum here in game 3. As we said, they have to win 3 straight games. The Razors, they just need 1 more to claim this Champions title, as the potion does get played onto the Paldean Taurus, bringing its health back up to 90. Another Blaze Tackle and another point as Porygon 2 is moved into the discard pile here. And we will not be seeing the Bombardment or the Fast Days deck again from the Petalburg Razors. They have already won. They have crossed that line. They need this Hall of Origin deck to get the victory. They move the Arceus into the active spot. It can outlast a hit from this Paldean Taurus here. but it still needs 2 more energy. And again, that's where that energy that was placed on the Regigigas, that second one, was very costly, because otherwise Arceus would be able to go on the offensive right now, and it does 100 damage with that Power Blast, which is too strong for even the Rapidash or the Houndoom. It is the Pokemon Center Lady though, being pulled by the Cinnabar Blazes. They could have restored 30 health from the Paldean Taurus, but that's still, with the recoil damage, would not have been enough to allow it to outlast a hit from the Arceus. And they do get a second energy plus that Giant Cape onto the Rapidash, 80 damage onto the Arceus, 10 damage recoiled onto the Paldean Taurus, and it's the Porygon Z being pulled with that Buggy Beam for the Petalburg Razors. And the Razors now thinking about how they want to approach this. They know they're in control at the moment. They've already got 2 deck victories, and it is going to be the Power Blast. They're going to take the Taurus out of this match. There is the 20 recoil damage, and this is fantastic for the Cinnabar Blazers, because both Rapidash and Houndoom can take Arceus off the board. They're in full control here in Game 3 with this Flameathon deck. They pull the Professor's Research, but they're just concerned with finally getting a game win. Taking Game 3, they flip the tails, they don't get the additional 60 damage, but regardless, Arceus moved into the discard pile, and the Blazers have finally got a game on the board. We are going to a Game 4. With our next table reset, it is again the Petalburg Razors who have flipped their heads. So once again, they are going first with this Hall of Origin deck. They pull the Porygon. They've got a Porygon 2 in hand as well, so the Porygon goes on the bench. The Blazers are once again using the Flint Lockwood deck. We're yet to see the Fire Spit Island deck of the Cinnabar Blazers, the Heat Rotom in the active spot, the Sizzlipede on the bench, and they've got the Center Scorch. 4 energy required though in hand. And with the Razors going first, they pull the Giant Cape. They've got the Celestic Town Elder and the Pokemon Center Lady in hand, and they are going to play the Pokeball. Guaranteed to get a basic Pokemon. They get the Bidoof fitting for this Hall of Origin deck. They are going to move it onto the bench. And they look at their Giant Cape and they immediately get that onto the Porygon. They're hoping to pull the Porygon Z so they can shortly get that Buggy Beam online and start to generate random energies in the energy zone of the Blazers, who pull their second Sizzlipede. They get a first energy onto the Heat Rotom. We can see the X-Speed and Giant Cape in hand as well. Coming back over to the Razors, they get a Rocky Helmet and they're starting to generate energy. Porygon 2 only requires 1 energy to go on the offensive as well. It does 30 damage to this Heat Rotom, bringing it down to 50 health. Now the Blazers need to think about how they want to approach this, as they do pull the Makago, because there won't be that recoil damage because there's a Giant Cape on the Porygon 2, not a Rocky Helmet, but the Center Scorch is online as the Heat Breath is now active, and they finally flip it heads. It's going to do 60 damage to the Porygon 2. The Petalburg Razors pulling the Professor's Research. They're hoping that they can get the Porygon Z out of their deck. They get a Porygon. They get the Porygon Z on the second card here. They immediately think of getting that online because they could run the risk of that Heat Breath taking the Porygon 2 off the board. Porygon Z online, it has 100 health remaining. They get a second of 3 required energy. It does do 80 damage, but they cannot go on the offensive with it right now. They do get the second Porygon online as well, and they finish their turn. Coming back over to the Blazers, who pulled their second Center Scorch, so they immediately move their second Sizzlipede onto the bench, but they're starting to set up that benched Center Scorch, getting its first of 3 required energy, plus putting the Giant Cape onto it. That Giant Cape taking its health up to 150, as this time they do flip the tails with the Heat Rotom, so it only does 30 damage to the Porygon Z. Comes back over to the Petalburg Razors. They pull their second Bidoof, but now the Buggy Beam is online from this Porygon Z. It will do 80 damage to this Heat Rotom. It only has 50 health remaining. They're also going to play the Pokemon Center Lady. This will bring the health of Porygon Z back up to 100. Now, with that said, Center Scorch requires at least 1 Fire-type energy, and that is already onto it. So the Blazers, they're not so concerned with what random energy gets generated because they can just move any energy onto the Center Scorch for the time being, because it will have to discard a Fire-type energy if it uses that Fire Blast. So they need to keep that in mind. The Blazes have generated a Psychic type energy, and they're actually going to move the second Center Scorch onto the bench. This will buy them a bit more time, because now this active Center Scorch with no energy has 130 health. It will take at least 2 Buggy Beams to wipe it off the board. It is the Arceus that gets pulled by the Razors immediately onto the bench as well, and they start to generate energy for it as the Buggy Beam continues from the Porygon Z. 80 damage on the Center Scorch, and this time it is a Grass type energy generated in the energy zone of this Flint Lockwood deck, who have pulled the Professor's Research. They are going to play that. They get the Slugma, they get the Rocky Helmet, and they've already got the Makago in hand. And now it's the Grass type energy onto this multi-energy attached Center Scorch on the bench. It's got the Fire type energy, it's got a Grass, and it's got a Psychic. As the Blazers end their turn, it is a Pokeball pulled by the Petalburg Razors. They're trying to thin this deck now. They get the Regigigas. They can't move it onto the bench because their bench is full. They're continuing to set up this Arceus though. And another Buggy Beam onto the Center Scorch, and that is the second point for the Petalburg Razors. They are 1 point away from taking our Champions game. The Blazers need to decide how they want to approach this. They move the Center Scorch into the active spot, 150 health. They pull the Dawn, and they have got a Fire type energy though that has been generated, which means they've got 2 Fire type energy onto the Center Scorch here. The Makago's online, and with this Fire Blast, 130 damage onto the Porygon Z. It is wiped off the board. They're trying to bring this game back. They have to get the next 3 points. They cannot afford to drop a single point, or this Hall of Origin deck will take the Champions game for the Petalburg Razors. Again, they took the wooden crown last season. It is the Dawn being pulled for the Petalburg Razors at 3rd energy onto the Arceus, as it was the Bidoof moved into the active spot. And they're trying to bring down the health of this Center Scorch anyway. So they get the Rocky Helmet onto the Bidoof, trying to get a bit of recoil damage back onto it, but the Blazers pull the Heat Rotom now as they're back to generating those Fire type energies, fortunately for them. And with this Fire Blast, it will be a 2nd point for this Flint Lockwood deck, wiping the Bidoof off the board into the discard pile, but it does get 20 recoil damage onto the Center Scorch here, and the next point will take game 4. The Blazers trying to take it to a game 5, bring it all the way back. The Razors trying to finish this now. They move the Arceus into the active spot. They pull the Porygon Z, a 4th energy onto the Arceus. They're looking through their hand. There is not much they can do other than go for this Power Blast, which is not strong enough to take the Center Scorch off the board. It has 30 health remaining, which frees up the Center Scorch. They pull the Pokeball, but they just need 1 more energy onto the Center Scorch, and with 130 damage of Fire Blast power, Arceus is going to be wiped off the board, and the Center Scorch and this Flint Lockwood deck have brought it back for the Cinnabar Blazes. We are going to a Game 5 decider in our Champions game. And with our final board reset, again, the Petalburg Razors will be going first. With this Hall of Origin deck, it is the Porygon into the active spot. They are going up against the Fire Spit Island deck that we've seen for the first time. It is the Heatran in the active spot with the Magma on the bench, and they've got a Magmortar in hand already. There is a Pokeball and a Porygon Z in hand for the Petalburg Razors, but here we go. Our Champions game decider, Game 5. Our winner of this one will be our Season A2 champion. The Bidoof is pulled for the Razors. The Pokeball pulls the Porygon. No mistakes, no errors. You need 3 points and you will be our Season A2 champion with that flair in Season A3. The Bidoof and the Porygon on the bench. They send it over to the Blazers, who do pull the Pokeball. They've also got the Pokemon communication in hand. They play the Pokeball. They get their second Heatran, that Rage and Mad Strike power. 2 energy, 40 damage, but if Heatran's taking damage, it does an additional 40, so the Razors need to be careful here. They do pull the Dawn, they've got the Rocky Helmet, but do they want to risk powering up this Heatran here? Now, with those Buggy Beams could be crucial for the Razors here in Game 5, because a lot of this Fire Spit Island deck, they do require fire energy. They can't afford, like Center Scorch could, to have random energies generated in the energy zone. There is a single energy onto that benched Porygon here. They think of moving the Rocky Helmet, but they opt against it, allowing the Blazers to pull their Professor's Research, who they play immediately. Both sides having a Dawn in hand as well. They pull the Magma and they pull the Pokemon Center Lady, but they get a second energy onto the Heatran. It's ready to go for the Rage and Mad Strike. 40 damage here onto the Porygon, bringing it down to only 20 health remaining. And the Razors now pulling their Regigigas, immediately moving it onto the bench with that Raging Hammer. It only does 50 damage, plus whatever damage it's taken. So if it's taken 30 damage, it will do an additional 30 damage. The Razors, though, need 4 energy onto the Regigigas, just getting the first one here. And they do end their turn as the Blazers pull the Ninetales. They don't have a Vulpix in hand, but they have that Pokemon communication. They're trying maybe to get that Vulpix out of their deck. And they're going to move the Magma, the Stoke Magma, back into their deck, and they get out the Vulpix instead. They get exactly what they need. And the Vulpix is on the bench, but so is the Magmortar, who does require 4 energy for that Burning Inferno that does 100 damage, but another Raging Mad Strike, another 40 damage, and the Blazers, with this Fire Spit Island deck, have taken the first point in our Champions game decider here over the Hall of Origin deck. The Bidoof being moved into the active spot. The Razors pulling their Professor's Research. They immediately play it to get 2 more cards out of their deck. They get the Arceus, they get the Porygon Z, still no Porygon 2 in sight, so they get another energy onto the Regigigas. And they're thinking about how they want to approach this. They can't go on the offensive. That Heatran is preventing them from wanting to do anything right now, so they send it back over to the Blazers, who do pull the Giant Cape, and they've got the Ninetales also now online. Ninetales, that Flamethrower, 90 damage, but it does have to discard an energy when it goes on the offensive. And it does require 2 energy, and all the Pokemon that are on the side of the Blazers at the moment do require Fire-type energies. They can't take anything else. Another Raging Mad Strike onto the Bidoof, 40 damage. The Razors pull in the Bibarel. This can buy them a bit of time to set up as they need. They do get energy onto the Regigigas. They're having a look through their hand. They need to think about how they want to approach this. They can evolve this Bidoof here, because Bidoof cannot outlast another Raging Mad Strike from Heatran. I was going to say Major Mad Strike, and that is not how that's pronounced. They get the Arceus onto the bench. They could get the barrel with that Rocky Helmet. That would buy them a bit of time. It would get 40 recoil damage onto the Heatran. But they end their turn here. They're willing to give up the Bidoof. How are they feeling the pressure? Are they feeling the heat from the Cinnabar Blazes, who do get a 3rd energy onto the Magmortar? It is the Heatran continuing with these Raging Mad Strikes, and they take the 2nd point. The Blazers are 1 point away from a 3-game win streak to completely bring this back. They're trying to bring this series back and take down the Hall of Origin deck, who has lost 2 games in a row. They just need to win 1. That's all they have to do, and the Razors are our Season A2 champions. It is the Porygon 2 that gets pulled for the Razors. It is brought online. The Regigigas, they're thinking of getting an energy onto it. They're really looking through their hand here. And they do get the energy onto the Regigigas. If they go on the offensive, though, this will power up that Raging Mad Strike. And the Razors thinking about how they want to approach this. Are they wondering if they should have moved the Bibarel onto that Bidoof in the previous turn? They don't know what to do right now. And they're going for it. They're going with the Raging Hammer. They could have gotten the Rocky Helmet onto the Regigigas as well. That would have only been 40 damage onto the Regigigas. That Rocky Helmet, though, still, they would not have had enough strength. They know that to take down the Heatran. But now Heatran, 80 damage capabilities onto the Regigigas after they just got a 1st energy onto the Ninetales as well. The Razors pulling the Pokeball. And they are going to get that Porygon Z online as well. The Razors looking through their hand, trying to figure out what they can do. They've just pulled the Pokeball. They can play that to see if they've got any remaining basic Pokemon in their deck, and that is exactly what they're going to do here. They get their 2nd Bidoof in hand. The Razors, they need the next 3 points. The Blazers, they only need 1. They've been able to bring it all the way back to this Game 5. The Razors trying desperately to hold on after those quick successive wins in Games 1 and 2. And the Razors frantically looking through their hand. They do get an energy on to the Porygon Z. They can go for this Raging Hammer. It does 130 damage, but Regigigas only has 60 health remaining. It is a 4 energy retreat cost as well. They're really thinking about what they're doing. They're going back and forth, they're unsure on what to do, the clock is ticking. It's very rare that we see a turn take so long, but this could decide our champions game. The Razors feeling the pressure, they do retreat the Regigigas, using all of their energy to do so, moving the Arceus into the active spot. They are going to end their turn, they send it back over to the Cinnabar Blazes. They do pull the Pokeball, they've got that Stoke Magma back in hand as well, and there's no basic Pokemon left in the deck of the Blazers. They play that Pokemon Center Lady, restoring 30 health onto the Heatran, taking it back up to 110 of 130. Another Raging Magic, 80 damage onto the Arceus here, as they just got a 4th energy onto the Magmortar. The second Porygon 2 being pulled for the Razors. Again, they're looking through their hand, thinking of how they can approach this. And they play the Dawn. This will allow them to move an energy from the Porygon Z to the Arceus. Now it needs 4 energy to go on the offensive. It has a 2 energy retreat cost. That's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to buy themselves a bit of time here to figure out what they can do. They are definitely feeling the heat from the Cinnabar Blazes. And it is that second Ninetales now being pulled for the Blazers. They get a 3rd energy onto the Heatran. They are going to retreat it, and with the Bursting Inferno from the Magmortar, 100 damage onto the Porygon Z. And with that burn, Porygon Z now only has 20 health remaining. They are going to flip the coin. They do cure it of that burn though. 20 health remaining. The Razors need to figure out how they want to approach this. This is not looking good for them. The Blazers are in full control. And the Razors get a 2nd energy onto the Porygon Z. It can't go on the offensive. They're going to retreat it. No one can outlast Magmortar's Burning Inferno. They move the Arceus back into the active spot. The Cinnabar Blazers lost the first 2 games in our Champions game, but they have won 3 in a row to bring it back, and the Cinnabar Blazers are our Season A2 champions, taking down the Petalburg Razors, getting their own redemption here, and they will take that flair into Season A3 of the PokeType League TCG. But Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you in Season A3.